Hello. Hello. How's everybody doing? Hope everyone enjoyed lunch. We're kind of coming into the back end of our final day of breakout sessions, and this is the Scaling Atlassian track. We have a great speaker and a great topic here, so I'm just going to go ahead and introduce him. But we have Don Baldine from Adobe, who is going to talk about how to self-heal your way to scale and eliminate critical outages. So without further ado, here's Don Baldine.
All right. How you guys doing? You guys alive? All right. Day 2, right? In Vegas, we've all, I'm sure, had a lot of fun. So I want to make sure you guys are alive. I want to get your money's worth, all right? Because I got a great talk for you guys. And I want to make sure you guys get every bit you can out of it, all right? So what I want you to do is to look at the person on either side of you, look them right in the eye, and tell them how amazing and beautiful they are, okay? Now, I'm being dead serious. Do this, right? Because you guys are all amazing and beautiful, all right? Because you got here, you're trying to learn, you're trying to perfect your craft, you're trying to get better at what you guys do, and that's awesome and beautiful, all right? So, you guys are probably like, what's he doing? Why is he wearing this crazy cape? Who is this guy? But before we dive into the agenda and get rolling here, I just want to share a little bit about myself and let you guys know how I ended up here, all right? I've built my career on scaling Jira, all right? And throughout my experience, I've learned a lot about making Jira highly available, right? I'm sure we can all relate, you know, from the 500-user single-node instances running on the machine under your desk to multi-node clusters supporting thousands and thousands of users globally, right? Now, you're probably wondering why I'm wearing this ridiculous cape. And honestly, I'm kind of wondering the same thing now too. But this cape is special to me, and I'll tell you why. Quick little story. A couple moons ago, I was working for a company, and they brought me in to scale Jira, right? Now, they were having massive issues with Jira. It couldn't be up for more than 24 consecutive hours without falling down, right? Users literally were not able to do anything. People were pulling their hair out, freaking out, right? Management's like, what are we going to do, right? We're getting flooded, our IT department, with requests, calls, angry emails. You know, I can't do sprint planning. You know, we felt helpless, like, wow, you know? So, long story short, we fixed those problems. But the lesson in all of this really came when my colleague, who was on my team, handling these requests, he had his lovely mother sew me this cape. All right, and he put JG on the back. You guys know what that stands for? Jira guy, right? That's who I became, the Jira guy, all right? It was a little ridiculous, but it really made me stop and think about how important and impactful the job that we're all doing is, okay? How impactful it is to the teams, our colleagues, and the businesses that we support, right? So much so that somebody had their mom sew me a freaking cape, right? So, I want you guys to remember that and take that with you back to your guys' jobs and remember our purpose and what we're here to do, right? Provide those world-class systems for our colleagues, okay? All right, now let's take a look at the agenda. First, I'm going to cover what critical outages are and what prompted us to explore self-healing. Next, I'm going to dive into self-healing and how it can help you scale. And here I'm going to break down each step of the process and show you how you can achieve this in your own environment. And along the way, I'm going to share with you guys lessons that we've learned in implementing self-healing in our environment. And finally, I'm going to wrap up by giving you guys an opportunity to ask us questions. Bueno? All right, let's roll. So, critical outages. You guys know what these are, don't have to tell you how nasty and impactful they are, right? But I'm going to anyways, okay? $300,000 an hour. That's the average cost of IT downtime, according to a recent Gartner survey. You break that down, that's $5,600 a minute, okay? In that survey, 98% of organizations say a single hour of downtime costs their companies $100,000. 81% of those respondents said 60 minutes of downtime costs their businesses over $300,000. And a whopping 33% reported that a single hour of downtime costs their firms between $1 and $5 million. Okay? Now, I don't know about you guys, but that's a lot of bread. Okay? 300K, I mean, you could buy a nice house in a lot of states. Not California, though. Not happening. And, I mean, the impacts are not just monetary, right? When your system goes down, your teams are forced back into the prehistoric rituals of collaboration, right? The whiteboards, the emails, the spreadsheets, like this guy, if you're lucky. But let's be honest, your office probably ends up looking more like this, right? People are like, woo, Jira's down, checking fantasy football. Maybe they're doing some online shopping. Maybe lining up a date for that night, right? But all jokes aside, it's estimated that it takes an average of 23 minutes to refocus after a single interruption. Now we're talking about time here. The single most precious resource we have on this planet. The one thing you can't get more of, right? And that's not all. When your systems go down, your brand takes a hit. And with enough of these hits, teams are going to stop, trusting your platform, and they're going to start moving away from your system. Okay? And obviously, if you're trying to scale, that's exactly what you don't want to happen. All right? So, if you want to scale, your system needs to be viewed as dependable and trustworthy. Okay? Because your platform is your brand. That's not mistaken, right? It's a direct reflection on you and your team. And this is where our purpose comes into play, right? To provide those world-class systems. Okay, so let's take a look at where we were at in 2017 when this journey started. Okay, we had just come off a migration to Jira Data Center. We're like, we got 4-node cluster. We got full failover. We're good, right? We had 2 Jira merges, right? Consolidation was the name of the game. We have all these acquisitions, okay? Everybody's got Jira. So consolidation was what we were tasked with doing, okay? So our platform was being adopted at a very high rate. We had incredible growth, 96% year over year, okay? And as that happened, of course, our system became mission critical. More eyeballs, more people using that system, okay? And so we had that lovely expectation of 4 nines of uptime, okay? Now, with the incredible growth in our user base also meant incredible growth in the number of customer requests, projects, issues, everything submitted to our team, right? But the funny part was, the only thing that wasn't growing during that time was our team, okay? On top of that, to make things worse, the server administration was manual. Server goes down, we had to log into the server, restart it, maybe take some logging, right? And that took away time from our customers doing what we were supposed to be doing, right? So it really came down to a classic case of do more with less, okay? And the trouble began, right? Outages began to pile up. And teams were getting more and more frustrated by Jira's performance, okay? Now, I don't know about you guys, but the aftermath of outages is no fun for anyone involved, right? You have those retrospective meetings. You got the paperwork. You have the questions. Can Jira handle it? Did we make the right choice? What are you guys doing? Right? All those questions you don't want to answer. To make it all worse, management doesn't care about the challenges you've experienced with growth. They just want to know why it wasn't available during that sprint planning meeting, right? And of course, our root cause analysis was not very good at the time, to be honest with you. We didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know about thread dumps, heap dumps, when to take them, why to take them, right? We thought we had made it, right? And of course, that was manual too. So that was a struggle, capturing these things at exactly the right time so that we could give Atlassian Premier Support what they needed, but we weren't. They couldn't effectively investigate our incidents, and I totally understand why, right? So we had some problems, right? Put that all together, combine that, it's one hell of a cocktail. More like a Molotov cocktail, right? So we knew we had to do something. Now, to me, nature is the greatest inspiration we have in this world, right? Does anybody know what this is? Can anybody tell me? Wow. You guys herpetologists or something? Like, did not expect that. You're right. It is the Mexican axolotl salamander. Now, this little creature is amazing. He spends his entire life underwater and can regenerate its limbs, its tail, its heart, and part of its brain if it loses it. It's amazing. So if Nemo's swimming by and takes out a leg, you just pop out another one. He's good to go. Okay, so I realized we needed to be like this guy, all right? We need to be resilient. And so, in the software world, the closest thing we can get to that is a discipline within site reliability engineering called self-healing, okay? Now, self-healing describes any application, service, or system that can discover it is not working correctly and without any human interaction, make the necessary changes to restore itself to a normal or desired state, okay? It's about making the system capable of making decisions by continually checking and optimizing its state and automatically adapting to changing conditions, okay? Now, obviously the goal here, to make fault-tolerant and responsive systems capable of responding to changes in demand and recuperation from failures. Sounds good, right? Right, so we knew self-healing. We need to do this thing. Didn't know too much about it. We were a little bit new to SRE at the time. But we decided it needed to be three things for us, okay? First, whatever we built needed to be based in SRE. Okay, we saw this as the perfect complement to Jira Data Center. Second, we needed a system of monitors that could accurately analyze the health of each node and then, without human intervention, heal unresponsive or overloaded nodes. Okay? And logging. We needed to address that little logging issue we had. All right? We needed to capture and gather the logging at exactly the right time. Okay? And this is where Premier Support came into play for us. So, to make a long story short, that's exactly what we did. We went out and built that. And to be honest with you, it wasn't that difficult. It was really, probably the most difficult part was deciding that we needed to do it, right? Going through all those trials and tribulations and determining that, hey, we got to do something. So that's the good news for you guys. This is easy, and you can do it. We went from 7 outages, poor uptime, poor RCA, to 0 outages, greater than 99.99% uptime, and complete logging. Complete 180 in the course of a year. Okay, now if you guys are anything like us, managing 20,000 users and their request requires our team's full attention, right? And at this level, you don't have the time or the resources to dedicate to managing Jira's uptime, okay? So this is why self-healing is so important, because it allows your team to do more with less. And I know we're all familiar with that, okay? And when Jira is available all day, every day, for an extended period of time, you begin to restore that trust with your customers. They begin to feel more comfortable about onboarding their entire process onto your platform, okay? And if you want to scale, it is critical that you restore that trust in your platform. Okay, now I'm going to break down this self-healing process for you guys, all right? Now for us, it really boils down to three things. You know, what do you need to self-heal? Well, you need Jira Data Center, you know, some multi-node cluster of some kind with a spare, if possible. Now, you can achieve this without a spare, but if you have the ability, I would highly recommend it. It's worked tremendously for us. Next, you'll need a health monitor, a simple service that queries each node and determines a health status for that node. Okay, something as simple as that reports something like success, error, or maintenance. Okay, really just checks two things: the presence of a trigger file and that health status that I mentioned of that host. Okay. Lastly, you'll need some triggers. Now, these triggers are not very elaborate, right? But you'll need one for the load balancer, something that tells the load balancer, hey, send traffic to this node, or hey, don't send traffic to this node, we're taking it out. You need some sort of off switch for this monitor, okay? There's going to be some times along the way where you need to manually get into a node and do something, right? And you don't want this self-healing process crashing into that, okay? And lastly, you'll need a trigger for the spare, something that tells that spare node, hey, get into service, okay? All right, so looking at a diagram of this, it's fairly simple, right? You got a standard 3-node cluster with your spare, got your shared file system, and that is exactly where the health monitor lives, on the share file. Now you've got trigger files that are either created on the share file system or on the nodes themselves, depending on what you're trying to achieve, and I'll get into more of that later. But zeroing in on this health monitor, it runs every minute on each host, checking the health of that node. Now, you know, going back to what I just said, it checks two things: the presence of that trigger file and the health status of that host. And it'll give you that success, error, or maintenance. Okay? Switching over to these trigger files, these are the key to automating this whole process for you guys. All right? Now, we actually even take it another step further, and we use it to automate our weekend reindex jobs. So this allows you to be flexible, adapt it to your process and your needs, okay? Now, these are simple. They're just blank text files, created and deleted, depending on what we need to do, okay? Now, files, as I mentioned, are either created in the shared storage or on the nodes themselves. So, for instance, the load balancer trigger that I mentioned, we create those on the unhealthy nodes themselves. This says, hey, take this node out of service. Load balancer, don't send traffic to this node. Now these are, you know, work with your load balancer team to configure those rules, but it's as simple as that, right? The off switch that I mentioned, we create that on the share file system, as well as that spare trigger. Okay, now taking a look at this monitoring sequence, it's really pretty simple. You have 3 checks followed by 3 potential outcomes, okay? This first check looks for the presence of the off switch. If it's there, the monitor stops there, right? No reason to move forward. Great. The second check looks for the presence of the spare trigger. If it's present, put that spare in service. And the third check looks at the response from that health monitor. Now, based on the response from that health monitor, you're going to have 3 different potential outcomes. The first, success. Jira's alive, great. All right, move on. Wait for the monitor to run again in another minute. Second potential response is a no response, but Jira is not running on the server. In that case, start Jira, right? Simple enough. And the third potential outcome is a no response, but Jira is running. So clearly, this is where our self-healing comes into play. All right, So when self-healing kicks off for us, what's the first thing that happens? We take thread dumps. Atlassian Premier Support loves thread dumps, so we take those. Now, we want those to complete without any interruption, so we sleep for 30 seconds to allow that to happen. Now, this might be different for you guys depending on, the time in between your thread dumps, how consecutively you want to run them, so you can adjust that. Next, we look for full consecutive GC runs within the last 2 minutes. Now, if this is false, we skip to running that health monitor one more time. But if it's true, we enabled heap dump by injecting that JVM parameter into Jira. So we run that heap dump at that moment. And again, we sleep for 135 seconds to make sure that that completes without any interruption. We want to make sure the data we're giving to Premier Support is good, so they can tell us what happened. Okay? Now after that sleep, the health monitor check is rerun again. If it's a success, heap dump is disabled. We remove that parameter. If there's no response, we restart the server. Okay, and the restart process for us is very simple, okay? Those trigger files I mentioned for the load balancer and the spare, we create those in the shared directory, and once that spare is in service, and that unhealthy node is taken out, and the proper logging is taken, the server is restarted. Now once Jira is back online, our monitor recognizes that, and it puts that node back into service by deleting those same trigger files for the load balancer and the spare in the shared directory. So we take out that spare and we put back in the node that was just revived. Simple, right? Okay, so throughout that process, throughout this entire experience for us, that was the one thing that really changed the game for us, was working with Premier Support to determine when we needed to take the logging and what sort of logging was important in our particular situation. Now, if you guys don't have Premier Support, I highly recommend going out and working with those folks and diagnosing your own situations. It's worth the money, okay? Because what works for us is not necessarily going to work for you guys, right? You guys might need to take different logging at different times. Who knows, right? So this monitor is going to help save you in a number of situations, right? Things like maxed out database connections, high CPU due to block threads, and memory shortages. But it's not perfect. There are gaps and limitations. And one of those being slow response time. Okay? There are times when Jira's not down, the server's responding, but it's slowed way down. And the customers are starting to chirp. They're saying, hey, what's going on with Jira? Right? And it's not load-based. So those are some things that we're actually working on our roadmap today. So there's 3 takeaways I want you guys to walk away with, okay? And the first being, if growing Jira and maximizing uptime is your goal, then you need self-healing. Okay? It's going to free up your team to focus on what matters, your customers. Okay? It's going to allow you to do more with less, get better logging, and get to the root of your incidents. And it's going to allow you to extend this monitor and relieve your team of the tedious weekend maintenance that you guys might be running. Right? And lastly, it's going to provide you that safety net. Okay? Restore trust in your platform and allow your teams to feel comfortable moving all of their work to Jira. Okay? It's going to allow you to rest easy, knowing that no bad queries or extremely high concurrent load is going to bring you down. Okay? So, before we wrap it up and take it into questions here, I kind of want to bring this back to what I was talking about earlier, about purpose. I want you guys to remember really what we're here to do, okay? And that's provide world-class systems for our teams to collaborate on, all right? We are enablers. We are the engine that makes teams go. And when you approach your architecture and your support from that place, your teams are going to have the kind of platform that they love, that will be there when they need it, how they need it. Okay? Now, I want to leave you with this quote. I really love it. A quote from Robin Sharma, and it goes like this: leadership culture is one where everyone thinks like an owner, a CEO, or a managing director. Everyone is entrepreneurial and proactive. Okay? And I love this quote because this is exactly how I approach managing my platforms in Jira. And I truly believe if you guys take this same mindset back to your teams and your groups, there's no challenge that you guys can't overcome. All right? There's no outages that you can't fix. I truly believe that.